Hey everyone. Oh, hey. I didn't hear you come in. Welcome to Thanksgiving dinner. No, so this was the trade-off. I went with you to Twilight and you come with me to this. I'm kidding.
There were a lot of people here, more people here
I know.
this time around.
I do love that there were way more people at this than Twilight last night.
A lot more curmudgeons. But
Well, only because Dave didn't go with us to Twilight last night. So let's talk a little bit about the featurette first
Oh
in
my
front of this
God.
film. So just to put it out there, she's never seen this movie before. And so I saw on the...
surprise.
Well, I saw on the movie listings a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, I was like, oh, 50th anniversary, they're re-releasing Night of the Living Dead. I was like, do you want to go see it? You've never seen that before. You'd really like these movies a lot, honestly. So, like, yeah, okay, so we go see Night of the Living Dead. And, so we sit down, and, like, this is a Fathom event. And at a lot of Fathom events, sometimes there'll be, like, trivia on the screen before the movie, or a featurette. And you had gotten up to get a refill on the drink.
Yeah.
You had gotten up to get a refill on the drink, and I was sitting there and saw some of the trivia. And I keep in mind, we're gonna get into spoilers here about this movie, but at least, like, you know, and me saying that is gonna make sense considering what we're going to talk about next. But me saying that, though, at least, like, I'm warning about spoilers, which we do on this show a lot. A lot of our reviews on here are certainly spoiler reviews, but we do say at the beginning, before we get into that, we usually say, like, oh, by the way, this is a spoiler. So, with that being in mind, if you haven't seen Night of the Living Dead, you should probably go watch it anyway before watching this review on it. You had gotten up to go get a drink, and one of the pieces of trivia on there was, so how does Barbara die at the end?
There were a lot of trivia questions that were just like, so, what does this happen? Like, what happens at the end of this movie, basically?
Yeah, and so, like...
I was like, okay.
I know, and so you got up to get a drink when that part was on, and I was like, oh wow, I'm really glad she got up during this. Okay. And then you came back, and they only had like 3 or 4 pieces of trivia, so they repeated it when you got back, and you were like, oh, well, thanks.
Well, so I just ended up looking down. Like, I was just like, okay, I guess I'll just kind of look to the side. It wasn't... Because I wanted to see some of the trivia where it was like, oh, they actually did eat raw meat during some of those scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they weren't eating it, but they were chewing on it.
Uh-huh.
So I thought that was interesting, but I would look down and it was like, so who dies at the end, basically?
Right, and then it gets, at least with that being trivia, it wasn't like vocally reading trivia, it was just kind of showing it on there. And then it gets into this 20-minute featurette at the beginning of it, which, again, not uncommon when you go see, like, a Fathom event re-release. And I realized that you run into a weird area when it's a 50-year-old movie. So it is the 50th anniversary movie. And so I get,
like, I'm not like, how dare they?
Right.
You know, I get it, because a lot of people that were there are way older than I think I was the youngest one there. And a lot of people there are just seeing it because they love the movie, and they already know a lot of the stuff about it, so I get it. I'm not upset. Like, I'm not like, oh, how dare they?
It was getting into a lot in the featurette, to the point to where I was sitting there in my head thinking, are they going to show the ending of this movie? I wouldn't have put it past them to show the ending of this movie. It didn't show the ending with Ben. It didn't show that, but it was getting to, and you were looking away from the screen because you were like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna look away, and what you were missing when you were looking away, it was showing in the featurette, like, Ben killing Mr. Cooper, and the little girl eating the mom and attacking the mom, and
no, I saw the little girl.
You did see that, and you know, like, there's a lot of spoilers in this, and you go like, should I get up and, like, maybe hang out in the lobby? And in my head, I was thinking, it might show the ending of this movie in this featurette. I wouldn't have put it past it. So I was like, you know what, maybe. So you were hanging out, it didn't. You were hanging out in the lobby, and I was hanging out by the door, still watching it. And again, I realize this is a 50-year-old movie. Okay, like it's not like, this is a new movie by any stretch. Most people probably know what happens in this movie. Most people probably know the ending. But this is a re-release, and there might be some... I think that I'm not saying that a featurette for a movie shouldn't have people talking about very, very key moments in the film and, what their favorite parts were, like the part with the little girl, or even the ending with Ben and everything. I'm not saying that shouldn't be in a featurette. But you know what? Maybe put it after the movie.
I would think it's just like saying, like, okay, so someone, if they saw, like, Star Wars, and then they figure out in the beginning of the movie that, and they've never seen it or don't know anything about it, that, like, Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. It's like, well, thanks, I guess. I guess I'll watch it now.
That, I'm sure more people know that than, like...
I know. I guess that was, like, off the top of my head.
Right.
That's the one thing I can compare it to.
For this... But,
you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, cool, I guess I now know what happens. Because they were doing all, like, the really shocking events throughout the entire movie. Yeah. They just basically showed the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like, the most shocking parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
Through, like, every single part. So it's like, well, okay, cool. I guess I saw the movie now.
I've been at these screenings before where they do show, like, the featurette thing after the movie. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But I've been to a lot where that's the case. I think that might have been the case when they re-released Taxi Driver. They had a thing after the ending of the movie. And this, there might be some people who are going to see this like you for the first time because it's a Fathom event. They're re-releasing it, and look, it's like I said, I understand it's a 50-year-old movie, but maybe compromise and put this at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But
this movie is kind of something that a lot of people my generation might not know much about, and might want to actually be like, oh cool, this is actually being shown to someone that's my age, or don't really watch movies like this in a theater. That's pretty cool. Like, so
it's okay. It sums it up for you in the first 15 minutes when they're just talking about it. More or less 90% of the film.
Just show every single clip of each highlight of the movie, and that's 20 minutes of that featurette. Except for the ending, which actually shocked me a little bit. So
right. That was honestly why I was like, in my head going like, you might want to get up and like, it's because again, I was actually surprised they didn't talk about the ending in the thing beforehand. So I'd actually seen this movie in the theater before. It actually gets theatrically shown a lot because I think it's still in the public domain. I think I'm not sure if that's changed or not, but so I'd actually in fact, the last time I saw the movie was I think 2000, because I was taking a course up at the Art Institute of Chicago on a weekend where George Romero happened to be there, and he introed a double feature of this movie and Monkey Shines, and so I was up there for that, and that was actually where I came up with the costume of the Cinema Snob.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was...
How did I not know this?
There was... you know nothing about me.
Yeah, you're right.
Because honestly, though, when you think about it, why would that come... Like, we're having dinner together, and I'm like, so did I ever tell you where I came up with my costume?
You told me a little bit.
Have I? Well...
I mean, it is your job.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't really know much about each other.
We really don't.
He's paid me on every hour for about $50.
These movie tickets are expensive in a lot of ways. No, so they did a Q&A afterwards, and there was a guy there. It says this in the Snob movie, but there was a guy there who was dressed like I am on there, and he was using this really like cartoonishly pretentious accent. This guy was like, this is all you'll feel like that.
Was he French or something?
No, he was just a douchebag.
Oh, the way you sounded a little French.
So he asked some really cartoonishly faux philosophical question about, it was either Monkey Shines or Night of the Living Dead, I can't remember which, and Romero just kind of paused and was like, I'm glad you liked it. Oddly enough,
Oh,
the guy looks more like I do now, in that he's got a shaved head. So anyway, he was dressed. So when I came up with a character, that I just remembered that guy. So I'm like, okay, I'll dress up like that guy.
That's
And
cool.
but I'd see, even though it's actually been a lot of years since I'd seen this movie.
Almost a decade.
Yeah, more, 18 years ago, I guess.
Oh, you said 2000. Yeah, so. More than that.
So
Yeah, wow.
Which well, I mean, it's not like that's hard to believe. It's probably been that long, but I've seen the movie a bunch, so it's not like I'm sitting there going like, this is all coming back to me. Like, no, I'd seen the movie a lot. I used to have a lot of copies of this movie. Same with Dawn and Day, especially this, because with it being public domain, there's a lot of DVDs and stuff and VHS releases of this movie. So typically on my birthday or Christmas around there, someone would get me like, oh, horror movie, really popular one, and it's only $1. Brad will want this. Like, Dave got me a copy of it one time. My favorite was like the double VHS tape that I had. That the first tape was the movie and trailers, and then the second tape was a spoof short called Night of the Living Bread, in which slices of bread are attacking a guy. It was actually, I remember it being kind of funny, but I might have been very stoned when I was watching it.
Night of the Living Bread.
Yeah.
That's what people would do with me with Nightmare Before Christmas, because I said I like. Yeah, because I used to love the movie, and then everyone's like, "Oh, well, she likes it, therefore she likes everything." Like, that's Nightmare Before Christmas, and to the point where it's like, I don't like it this much. Like, I mean, I like it, but I'm not like, I don't want like a clock that has Jack Skellington as it.
I probably do still have a lot of copies of this movie, because I've got a lot of those compilation DVDs, and this is probably on every single one of them. Like this and Messiah of Evil on like every like every single like horror compilation DVD that you get. The first time that I'd seen any of this movie was one of the first movies I ever saw was Halloween 2. And there's parts in Halloween 2 where they're watching this film. And so for a while, when I would see Night of the Living Dead, after that, I was probably in junior high the first time I saw this film. And so for, I think, maybe the first handful of times I'd be watching this movie, actually still kind of a little bit here and there, I remember the shots that they use in Halloween 2.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, okay, that's, yeah, I remember that shot from when they're watching this in Halloween 2. But had you seen any of this movie, really? Any clips?
I've some, maybe. Not that much. Really.
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I really don't know that much about it, except for that maybe it's a public domain movie, and that it's like really groundbreaking, and that's really about it. I was really surprised that there was a little bit of nudity in this.
Yeah,
there was only one shot of it, and so maybe that's why I've never seen it before.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I can't imagine your parents watching this movie with you.
Oh, they've seen Psycho, and they showed me Psycho.
Oh, did they really?
Oh, yeah. So I love Psycho, but I'm, this isn't like gory, really.
It's
maybe a little bit.
Yeah, a bit in some key parts.
Yeah, okay, maybe a little bit, but as far as like 60s go, gore.
You're watching your first time seeing this movie way better than my first time seeing this movie, because I mean, you're seeing it here for the first time, 50th anniversary release. It's like digitally restored and everything, and the print is very beautiful. Clear. Yeah, the first time I saw it, I go rent it from the video store. The only copy of the movie that they had was the colorized version. And I'm not talking the 1990 remake, which is actually a really fucking good remake, honestly. But I'm not talking about the 1990 film. It was this, but it was like the Ted Turner colorized whatever. And I was like, I don't like watching this. Still a great movie, but yeah, it is, this print that they had in front of here is like the most pristine, clear looking copy of the film I've ever seen.
Like, sometimes I was like, is this not even like filmed in the 60s? It looked like it's filmed now.
Which, as cool as that is, it's the clearest looking I've ever seen this movie, and that is cool. That is cool seeing that. I do like get with a bit of grain, you know?
I do too, because it adds like some sort of artistic value to it, I guess, but
and like it can make it more disturbing too. Not that the movie's not already disturbing regardless of how you watch it.
yeah, at least they didn't tamper it with it like they do with something like E.T. or like, you know, or
was
Star
a
Wars.
CGI zombie in the bathtub. I can't believe it. They took out Ben's gun and he gave him a walkie-talkie. That makes no sense.
I actually saw E.T. in 2001 when it was
Fuck
but
that.
it was in Spanish when I saw it. Because
Okay,
I was
well
I was
that's
living
pretty
in
funny.
Spain. It's
Yeah.
like E.T. Casa Home or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it was.
That would be
It was-
worth it.
Not to me, but
Oh yeah, you don't like E.T.
yeah, E.T.'s scarier to me than this movie was.
Mhm.
But this movie was really beautiful, and I really do like the main character.
Ben
Ben is awesome.
Dwayne Jones is cool.
He is cool. Like, it's like, if I'm gonna be under attack, have him be my, like,
Yeah.
protector.
Uh-huh.
He would be a little bit too much like, woman, you're being hysterical. But
Because at the end of the day, it's still 1968.
so I'm not like,
No, sure,
I'm not
yeah.
gonna, like, I'm not gonna watch this. But it's like, I
Uh-huh.
get it, 1968. But when he hits her, it's like, damn.
You were sitting next to me, and I was waiting for that part to happen. You were sitting next to me, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
And the thing is like, the people around us are, like, older, like, old.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of thinking, because they were laughing too, so I'm like,
Yeah.
do they think this is actually funny? Because they were laughing during some of the, like, the sexist or racist, not racist jokes, but like the more
Yeah.
like really
Mhm.
the old, like the dated jokes that.
Uh-huh.
What's his name? The guy,
Mr. Cooper?
Mr.
I mean, he is the villain in the
He
movie.
is, but when he would make a joke that was kind of like dated, they would be like, I'm like,
Which,
are
honestly,
they really laughing? Or
yeah,
is it-
but I kind of did the same. I did the same thing, too.
But wait, I know why you're laughing, but they might not be laughing for that reason. Did
I
you
don't
hear
know.
so many? Everyone in the theater was basically making old man noises the whole time.
Really?
You didn't hear that?
Not really, no.
They make noises I make when I'm sleeping. Like,
Okay.
they're clearing their sinuses the entire time, and they're like
Uh-huh.
making gross noises, and
Their tummies are rumbling.
and like at least 3 times their phones went off.
Okay, I heard that. That was a couple times. Those are the people sitting next to us.
There was someone behind us and someone
Yeah,
in front of us.
I did
And I'm
hear
like, oh, they're in like,
Mhm.
they're about to, they're 70 or 80. I give it a pass. They don't understand.
Well, I know, you would think that Twilight would be the screening where people are playing on their phones.
Well, they weren't playing on it. They just
Yeah.
didn't know how to put a silencer on their phone. They just,
Yeah, silencer.
silence their
Yeah.
phone. I'm sorry.
It was a really controversial movie when it came out in 68.
Was it because of the leading guy? Was
No,
black,
well,
or-
that I don't know, but it was certainly groundbreaking in that regard because it's not a movie where race gets brought up at all. It doesn't play into it at all. It's just this was a really groundbreaking movie in terms of the fact that Dwayne Jones is this lead guy and it's very colorblind in its casting in that regard.
Yeah.
Like
It was all,
it's,
sorry.
no, that was it really. Like yeah, in a movie where it just isn't brought up at all. And
Yeah, that's cool.
and at the time, certainly there were movies with Sidney Poitier, but race always kind of factored into the plot a bit in a lot of those. This one, no, not at all. And he is amazing in this movie. He's great. He's incredibly cool when he's boarding up this shit and just sitting down and having a cigarette. Like, you're rooting for this guy
Yeah.
throughout this whole thing. Like, you want this. Not only does this poor guy have to deal with all the fucking ghouls outside, but all the horse shit that he's got to deal with inside as well. With fucking Mr. Cooper, like, that dumb son of a bitch. And, okay, yeah, there's the part where he punches Barbara, but at the very least, she definitely had to be subdued in that scene.
Yeah. She wasn't, I mean, her brother just died
Yeah.
right before her eyes.
No, and I like that it's really portraying shock in her character.
Yeah, because she's very spaced out and
Yeah.
very just like kind of just doesn't even acknowledge what's going on at that point until the very end, and she finally snaps out of it. And
yeah, and I like that the monologue that she has about her brother. I really like that.
Yeah.
It's really showing this person very heavily deal with shock. Now later on, it maybe gets a little too much. Like later on, it kind of gets to the point where it feels like she's gonna start eating soap any minute. Like
if I saw my brother die in
Sure.
front of me, though,
Yeah.
I'd be pretty terrified.
yeah,
And if I, if I don't know how to handle someone I would think they'd be some random, like, crazy homeless guy or
Yeah.
something, like, chasing after me. I wouldn't think it'd be, like, a ghoul, but
right. Well, in
but
68, it was a lot of the violence was there was pretty controversial, and certainly there had been movies before this that were more the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, for example, are more graphic than this movie is, but a more mainstream audience was seeing this movie first. I mean, yeah, this very independent movie, but it was big when it came out. Like it started and just expanded more and more and more and more people were seeing it. So a more mainstream audience was by the end of it seeing this movie more so than like probably Blood Feast or 2000 Maniacs or The Gruesome Twosome or movies like that. So there were a lot of articles that were being written about how like kids were going to see this movie at like a matinee. I know, think of the children, but I mean, take into consideration 1968, seeing this movie that was a huge financial success back in 68, and there are scenes on there of just like organs just straight up being eaten and bare ass on screen. And,
I get it.
yeah, certainly.
For the time.
Yeah.
And that's how it's going to be with most decades. There's going to be
Oh, yeah.
some sort of, parental group that's like, oh no, think of the children.
Right.
They're watching The Simpsons or, But this movie also kind of reminds me of, God, what I'm thinking of. That one movie, Raimi's movie that we saw. God,
Evil Dead.
I was like, there's dead in the title somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's like, it was really low budget.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this groundbreaking movie that was just really horrifying.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I was thinking about that.
No, it's the fact that like both of them in like an isolated location.
Yeah, I
and
was thinking about that.
A lot of stuff that came after this really owe a lot to Night of the Living Dead. Like things like, I mean, a lot of siege movies like Assault on Precinct 13. I know that kind of attributes a lot to Rio Bravo, but a lot of Night of the Living Dead as well. I mean, hell, again, it was remade in 1990 that Tom Savini directed it, and it's actually a really fucking good remake. Better than a lot of the remakes to the other George Romero remakes to his movies. But no, there are moments in the movie that are disturbing, that feel really real. Like in I would say this movie's maybe more disturbing than this, but no, it is. But like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a few moments in this movie that feel very real, and like a lot of the great moments in Chainsaw Massacre do, where you just kind of feel like you're there in the middle of all this shit that's going on.
What's most suspenseful for you?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen.
No, I meant the scenes in this movie.
Oh, in this?
Yeah.
Okay, like when the daughter kills the mom, for one, or when Barbara's taken out by her brother or dragged out by her brother at the end. When where they're surrounding the car after the two got burned up and they're just sitting there eating the organs. Even little things like Ben just going around the house looking for stuff to board up the walls with, and a lot of improvisation that they're doing with a lot of their lines in the movie. Even like his monologue about what he just had to deal with before he showed up there at the house, and Barbara's monologue about her brother. There's a lot of really, there's cheesy things in this movie, but there's a lot of really real moments like that.
I don't think it was that cheesy.
Well, I mean, No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a suspenseful, scary movie, but it does have a few parts that.
Well, yeah, they walk very slow. Like
I don't
the
even
ghouls.
mean that. Like, I don't even mean that because that's kind of a zombie movie thing. But, like, okay, off the top of my head, and granted, I think this is supposed to be a little funny, but when the chief at the end says like, "Oh yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up."
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, I mean there's you can get some chuckles out of this movie a little bit. But speaking of that guy was at one of the earliest cons that we did. He was one of the guests.
Oh really?
Yeah. This is one of the first ones that we did when we started doing the site. It was one in Indiana, and it had a lot of the Night of the Living Dead people there. And it also had like some of the Dawn and Day of the Dead people there as well. And he was sitting at a table, the guy who played the chief in this movie. And we're walking, this is a room full of a bunch of people, like, and so we're walking through this particular room. It's like me, Sarah, Brian, and Nick, I think. Mm-hmm. And we didn't even look, because again, there's a lot of tables there, and there's a lot of people sitting there in like a hotel. And we didn't even look, and we were talking amongst each other, and we were just walking by, and he was sitting there. We didn't even see him there, and because again, we were just kind of in conversation walking by, and he just looks up and just goes, "I was the chief." It scared the shit out of us. We looked out like, oh God.
I wish I was there.
He was, yeah, he was. No, he was the chief in Night of the Living Dead.
Where was this? Like in Chicago?
No, this is Indiana. This was one of the Indianapolis horror conventions, like Horror Hound maybe, or Famous Monsters. I can't remember. But like, so we would quote that to each other a while, like when we'd be walking by I was the chief. Do we buy something from him? I'm gonna do that when I get like 70, 80 years old. I was the snob.
Don't.
Why? Have I ever told you about when again, this was some years ago when I would be at a convention and someone would come up to the table, they'd ask who I was, and I would just make up shit. Like I would be like, "Oh, I was the fat kid from Explorers."
Just say you're an artist and be like, "Hey,
I'm an artist."
Just be like, I'll draw you for like $10 or something, and then you just draw this really like weird abstract Picasso thing.
I was the kid with glasses from the Monster Squad.
And then I'll just say I'm Rachel.
Yeah. They'd be like, oh, okay, and then they'd move along because I dare you to challenge me. I should do that again the next convention.
You embarrass me enough. He really does.
I was one of the Mighty Ducks. Like, I have to say something that's relatively age appropriate to like how old I am now. Like, it's conceivable I could be one of the Mighty Ducks. You don't want me to do that? I was Strokemon. I was one of the E.T. pornos.
You're one of them?
Yeah, there are 4 of those movies.
Yeah, but what were you? Just E.T. or were you?
Was I E.T. in them? Yes. Which one? I don't know. That's a mystery. I could be the Brazilian one, the Austrian one, the Ron Jeremy one, or the Dream Zone one. I hate that I know that.
You already embarrassed me enough in public. Stop it.
All right, fine. I won't lie about my filmography anymore. What about your, like, I mean, isn't your filmography on IMDb, like...
Buddies?
Huh?
Buddies?
Yeah, like you were in something called Buddies.
It was some sort of like... Yeah, Buddies. I was like...
You're on an episode of the short-lived Dave Chappelle sitcom Buddies.
No. Something called Buddies. I don't really know.
Her IMDb filmography is like combined with. It's done that to me. One time I was credited as editing a movie called Running on Indian Time. I was credited on as being in the identical on Rotten Tomatoes. But so anyway, back to Night of the Living Dead. So you did really like the movie.
I did. I would like to see the second one.
Oh yeah, Dawn of the Dead's probably my favorite horror film of all time, and Day is really close.
I'd like to see New Moon.
That is a wildly different series. Not even the same monsters.
No,
What'd you think of the ending of this movie?
I was kind of depressed by it.
Right? Exactly.
That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of depressed by it, but I'm like, oh well, I guess that makes it like more surprising. I don't know, like
it does. The first time I saw this movie, I was sad for days because not only does it end
like all for nothing.
Not only does it end on a bummer, but you really love this guy. Like, you are pulling for him through this whole movie. Like, it isn't just like, hey, yeah, okay, whatever, he was annoying anyway. It's not like that. Like, this guy's had to deal with, like, I mean, he's had to deal with shit so bad in this movie that he just beats the fuck out of and shoots Mr. Cooper at the end of the movie. And so, and to survive, like, all of this shit, this, like, horrible night. What I like about the ending of this movie is that, again, yeah, it's surprising and it is depressing because of how likable Ben is in the film and how really good Dwayne Jones is in the film. But it also kind of shows that just as he has this, like, little, like, glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, the world's fucked. Like, even though there's a glimmer of hope and all is just lost. And the world is just fucked.
Right, square between the eyes. Just get him.
Just get him right between the eyes. I was the chief.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but it's like, what do I expect from this kind of movie? I wasn't expecting him to like be covered by an army blanket, like, you know, like
a proper burial. I like that on the news when they say like, no, there's not going to be time to make funeral arrangements.
We're going to cremate them.
You need to cremate. I mean, I know you want to make funeral arrangements. You can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but it's like, well, I don't expect anything really happy, so.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like it a lot. It was a really good-looking movie. I do like the main character a lot, and it is suspenseful, and I can see why it's groundbreaking.
Oh, yeah. You would really like the Dawn and Day land, probably. Diary of Survival, not really, but no, yeah, I've got several copies of this movie, and I got several copies of Dawn and Day at home too. But yeah, I'm always down for watching those movies.
Oh, it is October.
So we have very little time. Before we get to that, though, we got to watch the Submarine movie tomorrow. I got 5 movies this weekend. Jesus Christ.
And then Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, and like, so once the movies are over tomorrow, I'm going to be grabbing that, like, as soon as the movies are done tomorrow. And when I'm not playing that over the next several days, I'll be at, tomorrow's Hunter Killer, Johnny English Strikes Again or whatever, and then Mid-90s is also out, Old Man and a Gun is out, there's a new Pure Flix movie, and then there's the re-release of Hocus Pocus and Rocky Horror. Damn, there's a lot of fucking movies.
I think I'm seeing Hocus Pocus with you.
Yeah, Sarah wants to go see that too.
Who's reviewing it? Who's reviewing?
All 3 of us can, like, it's fine with me. You guys have more fond memories of that movie than I do.
Yeah, because I grew up with that movie quite a bit.
Yeah, I didn't.
And I like Sarah Jessica Parker a lot. She's great, so. And I have to see that stupid ass movie with you tomorrow.
Hunter Killer, the submarine movie.
You gonna like buy me lunch or something?
Yeah, I'll get. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're married, but I mean, you know what I mean.
Here's a fillet of fish.
A fillet of
I'll take the fries and the sandwich.
You can have
You can have these ketchup packets.
You can have my mayo chip.
No, that is also mine.
Hey, what's mine is yours.
Fine. I'll take the mayonnaise, you take the ketchup, or we just switch off. All right, everyone.
Anyways.
All right, everyone. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But so anyway, all of those movies are coming up here the next several days, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks a bunch, everyone in the chat, for watching. Take care.